Okay, we're holding Hilchos Taaruvot, Siman Kuftes, bin Yovesh b'Yovesh Nis Arv. We covered Seif Aleph, in the Chaber and the Ramah, the basic halachas of Bitul. When something is not a chaticha ruyul iskabed, then if it's min b'min or Yovesh b'Yovesh, it's botol b'roiv, chad b'trei. And as the Shach points out, what the Mechaber meant that it's not a chaticha ruyul iskabed, because had it been a chaticha ruyul iskabed, which we already covered the halachas, then it really would not make even a difference between min b'mino and min b'sheino minoi. Right? It would not be botol afilu be'elef. And the various shi'urim that are not botol be'elef, the various situations or circumstances, of course, are all midrabanan. Whereas what we need to know for now is that midin Torah chad betrei, that is, of course, min b'minoi, and according to most shittas, min b'she'eno minoi b'yovesh, of course. Once you introduce lach, once you introduce roitev, then you have a problem of tam. Now, even though you have a problem of tam, and you may have shishim in the overall mixture of the chalant, of the tafshil, to cancel out any flavoring, in the solid foods that may still be present and identifiable, you still need a chad betrei. In other words, even though you have the shishim in the rest, as long as we're talking about isurim that are nikorim, in other words, you don't know which one, of course, is the isur, but identifiable solids, then amongst them you still need the shir of chad betrei. The shishim that is required whenever roitev is involved to deal with the tam ke'ikr that poses a problem, a separate kind of a problem that may affect other foods that are in the pot. But the pieces themselves, the hot dogs, the goulash, whatever it is, one or some of them being treif, once we have determined that the majority is heter, then it's okay. So if you don't have a majority amongst the pieces, even if you have shishim, it's going to be a problem.
Because the shishim is identifiable as being yisr, because it's not a piece.
It's right.
It's a piece.
Exactly. It's something completely
so
separate.
Confused as to
right.
where the
right.
is yisr.
Right. What we did mention last week, however, is if you don't have shishim amongst the pieces, in a situation of min b'she'eno min, which at least midrabbanan you may need to have shishim, can you be mitzar of the roitev? Because the whole din of shishim by min b'she'eno minoi b'yovesh is midrabbanan, because you may come to cook them, right? What happens if you did? But you do not have 60 unless you include the roitev, but not amongst the pieces. So that's a machlokes between the various achronim that we have. Whether shishim between everything is enough, or do you need shishim amongst the chatichas themselves?
Now this derabana that you need shishim by min b'shei, that because you might come to it.
That's correct.
Is that if it's raw, or with the same thing?
No, it makes no difference.
Doesn't make a difference.
No, it still doesn't make a difference. We still assume there's still a chashash that there may be some tam left over.
They would come cooking?
Of course. As far as whether they would come to recook it, you mean?
Right. The shishi that we said was because of the rashash.
Yeah,
Come to cook.
that's a very good question, because it's already
separately.
Yeah, that's actually that could be why there is a shita that is not mechalik and always requires shishim. I think that's what we were talking about, the Minchas Yaakov. No, Minchas Yaakov is the one that said it was okay. It could be the other, let me see here. Yeah, it could be the Minchas Kohen. The Minchas Kohen says the chatichas would be asuris if you don't have shishim, because it could be, I don't remember clearly, that there is one of the poskim that holds that we're not mechalik. In other words, you always need shishim. By min b'she'eno mino, even though it's midrabanan, even though between everything you have shishim, it should be good enough to deal with the problem. Okay, after all, the main problem then is the tam. Nevertheless, we're not mechalik. What happens if this? I think this was the one. What happens if you take the entire mixture and you cook it without roitev the next time around? In other words, not this same one, but what happens if in another situation you will have the min b'she'eno min without roitev? So in other words, the gzera of min b'she'eno min yovesh is across the board. We're not mechalak, and therefore you will always require shishim. So the one who's machmer to require shishim of the pieces itself says that maybe he would say the same thing in your situation, that we're not mechalek.
In other words,
It's a gzera.
It's an atu.
It's an atu. It's a gzera for all types of circumstances, even though it's already cooked.
So it's not to confuse people.
Not to confuse people. So it's a good. You mentioned a good point, but based on this, I think the Svara in the Minchas Kohen, why he's machmer. Even though you have 60 with the Reiter, why would you need 60 just at the pieces? It's the whole thing is a chumrah. So he says because we're not mechalek, a situation where possibly you may cook without Reiter, you may not have the liquid, you will need 60. So without mechalek, we don't make any distinction.
No, I have a
Right.
question. So Minchas Kohen says have 60 in the right against you also need 60 in the pieces?
Yes.
So you need 60 no matter what?
No matter what. Min b'sheino minoi.
He says, he passes you ignore the right.
Exactly.
You can't factor it in.
In that situation of min b'sheino
Minoi.
minoi. Right. Yeah.
You don't even need right.
Right, exactly, yeah. All right, we spoke a little bit about the Rabbanans. That was in the Ramah. Then min b'sheino mino b'yovesh boto b'roiv. And you don't need 60. I'm sorry, in other words, by an isur de Rabbanan, min b'sheino mino, yovesh b'yovesh is going to be boto b'roiv, you never need 60. As the Shach points out, you're never going to have a problem, you're never going to come to an isur de Raisa. But from the Ramah, it was not mashma like that. I think we're machmir, unless it's a hefsid. We're machmir. We don't distinguish isur de Rabbanan and isur de Raisa. If it's a min v'sheino mino, you always are required to have 60. Before we go on, another important point that we covered last time was the Taz question about min b'sheino mino b'yovesh, that the gezerah was you may come to cook them, and you're going to come to an isur Torah. But the problem with that, the Taz says, is that why do I have a concern to begin with if I hold that the bittul has already occurred? Now this is a very important point that we will cover a little bit more in depth today, that the bittul has already occurred. When does bittul really occur? Does it occur with my knowledge after I've identified, I've been told that they're mixed? There was the famous concept of Niddah or lo Niddah Taaruvot. When does that happen? So we'll discuss it soon. But the Shach has a good point. I mean, the question is, if at some point we say that the bittul has occurred within of the Torah, then why should there be a concern altogether? So the explanation given, of course, is that if they in fact are cooked in the tam, there will be a tam, and if there will be a tam, the isur will be nikar. Because once there is tam, the isur is nikar. So
According to the Rosh, there's more isur.
But according to the Rosh, there's no more isur. Remember the famous Rosh? It's gone. It's a tremendous big chiddush, which we're going to discuss a little bit more in depth today as well. So these concepts make a big difference. There's a great amount of nafkaminas between how you hold in the various situations. So anyway, before we go on to Sif Beis, just another few points that I've managed to dig up. Very interesting Pischei Tshuva here. Pischei Tshuva brings a situation that, of course, is discussed by other poskim, where you have 3 pieces of meat. 2 of them are heter and 1 of them is asur. But the 2 that are heter together are not as large in volume as the isur. This is an incredible question. Do you follow me? In other words, you have 2 against 1 in number, but you don't have more in the heter meat, weight, mass, volume, whatever you want to call it, right? Against the isur. We didn't think about that one. Oh, interesting.
Well, yeah.
Huh?
It's counterintuitive to call it against 1. So you have 2 small frags,
Right.
and 1 large isur.
Right, and you don't know which one is which.
Two against, well, you would know.
And by the way, they make those small franks, you know.
I know.
Yeah.
but would you know that?
You don't know which one.
Or maybe if one of the small ones is two.
No, you don't know. You don't know anything. You're told.
You just told that
one of them is straight.
You don't know if it's one of the small ones or one of the big ones.
Right. You don't know. You know one of them is straight for sure. Right. But you have 2 that are heter. So is the din of roiv over here the din of majority in number, or is it in the amount of meat?
Bittul works on volume. The shishim, why would this be any different?
Okay.
Because the other ones go by being, what do you call it, neutralizing the
Tam,
test.
right? Remember?
So you need the volume physically, practically to accomplish that.
Yes.
Here where we're going by majority,
That's a good
we learned from Sanhedrin, we don't go by whether the rabbi is small or large.
Right.
Each rabbi counts as one voice in Sanhedrin, and we go by majority.
Yeah,
so here too also you can say, I have three says, what do I care whether one is large and one is small?
So you have a good point. I mean, as far as in 60, requiring 60. Sure. And we will see how that comes into play.
But I could see the other side.
Sure. But it will all it will all come down to on how you learn the din of Roiv, which we discussed last time. What is Roiv doing here? What is it learned from?
Yeah. So that would be
right. You
don't weigh the rabbis.
Yeah. So interestingly, the Chazon Ish and others hold that numbers is enough. Numbers is enough. Whereas the Knesset Agdola and the Primi Godim, Chikri Leiv, all these other poskim, they hold no. The Ikar din of Bittul here requires that we have more meat, even a little bit more meat of the heter over the Isser.
Of the two.
Between the two together, yeah. The Knesset Agdola actually says it requires both. You need both in minyan, roiv minyan, in the number, and in the meat. Now, what is exactly the difference between them? It's in how you understand the whole din of roiv, the whole din of bitul beroiv min Torah. Is it a din of kol de porish? Is it similar to the din, I should say, of kol de porish, that I say on each individual item, this belongs to the majority, right? And as it is pointed out, I believe one of the points mentions it, that this is, we're talking about three individual incidents that are coming together. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and on each one I'm done, and I'm saying that this one belongs to the majority. Right. Versus, do I look at the whole thing as a whole unit? In other words, the whole din of Roiv is Exeras HaKosov, that this Taaruvot, this mixture, right, is to be looked as one. And what do I have in this mixture? I have more of one versus the other. That is a big difference here. So if I look at the whole thing as one mixture, then I look at, of course, at the greater quantity, not in number, but in Basar. Yeah. Whereas the other one is looking at each individual unit by itself. And he's considering each one as part of the majority. So the moment I have 2 in number, is sufficient. I don't need to have more meat necessarily.
Aren't the two actually interrelated?
Oh.
When I look at Kol Sheparish and Ruba Parish,
right?
I'm assuming a Ruba where that Ruba is majority is permitted.
Yeah.
And then I say Kol Sheparish and Ruba. So how do I establish that the majority is permitted? Do I go by Because what do I say? Kol Sheparish and Ruba Parish. Each one that I remove from the gathering comes from the majority in that gathering.
Right.
So I have to establish the majority in that gathering. The majority in that gathering is Isser. So of course everyone then.
No, but I haven't established yet.
No.
Right.
I have to establish what the majority is.
I am establishing every single time something is coming to me.
Well, if I have 3 pieces and I took 1, I only have 2 left.
Right.
So I'm going by the original distribution, not by what remains after I take 1. So the original distribution, I had to first establish what was the majority here.
And the majority was in number.
So why don't I say the majority was in volume, or even there?
Right.
So the question, how do I establish a majority, actually arises in both cases. In the second case,
yes.
I'm taking 1 at a time. I still have that question when I'm establishing from which majority am I taking 1 at a time.
But the Shita that holds that each one is an occurrence holds that the whole concept of Bitul Berov is learned from or is similar to the din of Kol de Porish.
So that's what I'm saying. But
so
in
the Kol de Porish, in the din of Kol de Porish,
I've established what the majority, the nature of the majority is.
Yeah.
And there I have the exact same
question. Not really. There it's more a question. There it's more a question of number because it's of what you said yourself. Because it's similar to the Sanhedrin. Remember that.
That's when I take 1 out. No, but the second in both cases that it's similar. I
yes
just
and
saying,
no.
the fact that I'm taking one out doesn't get rid of the problem that I have in the other case. Because besides the fact that I'm taking one out, and that's that I go by numbers when I take out.
Right.
When I'm establishing, first of all, what was the majority in the mixture before I took one out. There, I can just as well raise the question, do I need
some
to
ways
by
you
volume
can.
or by number to establish what that majority
You're right.
is for the
In
mixture?
some ways you can. It's a very, very...
Doesn't eliminate the problem.
It's a very, very gray area. And that's why we have here a different interpretation and a different opinion as to what we really need to follow. The general consensus, the way I always understood it, is that the roiv is determined by the amount of meat and not by the sheer numbers.
So that would be in the question of Meruba Parsh, it would be the exact same thing. It would have to be determined by volume what the majority of this mixture
is altogether, but it's how I look at a thing. Do I look at each individual occurrence or do I look at the whole thing as a whole? It's a xeris akosov, but I look at everything as a whole and I see that there's more of one than the other. Now, according to the Knesset Agdola, he would require both. In other words, he understands that you needed to have a roiv in both.
Both in volume as well as in minyan.
Yeah, in both. Yeah.
Well, in minyan it seems obvious because the halacha says 1 in 2.
Yeah.
So
right. Anyway, that was, I thought, was a very interesting.
Well, let me ask you.
Situation.
Generally speaking, besides the Knesset Agdola, you say.
That requires both, right?
Now, besides Knesset Agdola, if I have one really large heter,
right,
and I have a smaller isser,
okay.
Does that mean I can say that
that's the Rashba speaks about that, I believe, in the case that he's not materit.
No.
Yeah.
Even without being the necessary.
Right. You have only...
you have only 2.
Yeah, you see, you're mechaven to... that when you have a very large piece of Isser or Heter, and another smaller piece of either Isser or Heter, so you have 2, but you have one that is a lot larger, that maybe even 3 or 4 times as big. That's not sufficient.
That doesn't help you because
doesn't help you.
You only have 2. So everyone would require that the minyan.
Apparently,
the question is, do you also, in addition, majority in the volume?
Could be. It could be.
Does anyone say that the majority of the volume is sufficient, even if I have 1 heter and 1,000 isurim or 10 isurim, but they're all very small?
Yeah, but apparently, when it comes down to having only 2, from what I recall, the shita that holds that you need. The shita that holds that you need that puts an emphasis on the number says you don't have that here.
Of course.
Right.
So that's clear.
Okay.
My question is, does anyone say in the case of 2, if you have more volume in the header, it's good enough?
No, that's what I'm.
No. That's the other.
That's the other side. The other
does
side.
Does anyone say you have 2, you can still take 1?
I don't recall for sure. Because the Knesset Agdola says clearly you need both.
And the question is, if you have 2 and you don't know which one is the isser, but one is larger, how do you know it's the heter that's the larger? If you have 2,
that's the whole suffix over here.
Yeah. How do you know which one is larger?
Yeah.
3 you can argue. You have 2. How do you know?
Would it be muster now to cut it up into? It's a suffix bichlal. It's the bigger piece. So can you cut it up like a mevatel isser situation? And now you have 4.
I mean, you want to cut it in?
I want to cut it up now. I want to have 6 pieces. I have a big piece here. I want to have. So I want to have a rope. Would it be permissible? It's an interesting question.
Oh, to have a minyan, you mean?
Not to have a minyan. I only have 2 pieces.
Right.
Right. One is very large and one is small.
So you have 2 pieces. You have 3 pieces.
Yeah.
If you cut the wrong piece, it doesn't help you.
Exactly, but I don't know which one is.
You don't know which one it is. So how does this help?
Yeah. Anyway, there's also a din of kavua, kol kavua, kemechza al mechza dame, which we may cover later on, which is a whole separate din. When you have shechted several chickens or several cows, and you know that one of them came out tray, but you don't remember which one it is. It's a slightly different din. It's called the din of kavua. And they discuss it over here, the poiskin, but I think we'll leave that for another time. So anyway, this was a very interesting chiluk, and this chiluk of how do you judge really is based on how do you really interpret the din of bittul. All right, another din that we have to clarify, which we mentioned last time, is also legave. Okay, we say the whole mixture is bottle. Can I eat all of them together, one after another, the same individual, or 2 separate individuals? So if we look at the mechaber says, מותר לאוכלון אדם אחד כל אחת בפני עצמו, אבל לא יאכלו שלושתם יחד. In other words, one individual can eat all of them, but not at the same time. And of course, this shita is who? It's not the Rosh, right? If you look at the makor of this halacha, the makor is the Rashba. So the Mechaber here is paskening like the Rashba as far as, okay, it's bottle. Now what? Can I have them all? Or do I have to give them to my friends? And if I have them all, can I have them all at the same time or not? So the Shita of the Rashba is some sort of a compromise between those who say you can't have it, and believe it or not, there is such a Shita. There's a Shita, who was that Shita? The Shita of the Tosis Rid, that says if the same individual were to eat them one after another throughout the day, is Chayav Korban Chatas. Yeah, one after another. I think he's the only one that says that. The Rosh says it's all heter, it's being transformed. So the Rashba is saying yes, you can have them, but not at the same time. So I call it a compromise of sorts between the various shitas.
Because what does it have to do?
Now, why does the Rashba say that bechlal? I mean, the Maisa, it's mutter, it's bottle, isn't it? The thing is, because at some point, if you're going to be eating all of them, you're going to be poigea ba'isur.
Exactly.
Right. That's all. You for sure would have come to the isur.
But what does it help to not at the same time? So not at the same time, you'll for sure.
What is that?
What does it have not to do at the same time? So not at the same time, for sure.
So I'm saying at the same time, you're
different people.
Right.
I see.
Yeah.
Different people, so you don't know which one ate these.
I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't explain it right. When you're eating it all together, you're for sure vaday pogea be'isur.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas if you eat them separately, even though you're eventually going to be eating the isur, every single time you eat one, we're saying that you're eating the one from the roiv. So you are considering it or giving it a different status every single time that you're grabbing one from the bunch. But when you eat it together, you're for sure being pogea be'isur.
So the difference here is
but
single eating act or separate eating act.
But there's a real problem here. The Chazon Ish has a very interesting diyun here on the Rashba's Shita altogether. And he quotes the Mishnah I think it's in Orla. If somebody dyed a string, a thread, using Orla, which you're not supposed to, right? And then that thread got mixed into a garment. And there was a shear of bitul of Echad Umosayim, 201 of Orla. He says, what's the difference? If it's batul or not, you're still wearing it. It's still there. No. So the Chazon Ish asks on the Rashba, based on that Mishnah, it's batul.
So
wait a
the
minute.
Mishnah is saying that it's still there.
It's mutter. No. The Chazon Ish says, we know it's mutter. It's batul.
So the Mishnah says it's
batul.
Yeah. So
there's a din of bittul. There's a din of bittul in many areas.
Chazon Ish says here the Mishnah is using the din of bittul to permit you to do something, even though we know you're wearing it.
Right.
It doesn't matter that you're
right. It doesn't matter. Now, by shishim, like you mentioned before, when you have lach belach, right? So it's a question of tam. But at some point, the time is gone.
Right.
Physically gone, so it's not a problem. But here, when you actually have the isser on you, then what are you accomplishing? But nevertheless, it's mutter. If it nevertheless over there it's mutter, why shouldn't it be mutter over here? It's a very, very interesting diyun here, the Chazon Ish, on the Rashba's sheet. I mean, the Rosh seems to be making sense. I mean, if you hold that it's mutter, it's mutter. You want to be machmir? That's something else. As they point out, the ones who hold that you throw away one of the pieces, it's a complete chumrah. You can even do it on Shabbos. Even though on Shabbos you're not allowed to be metakin, and you might think this is a form of a tikkun. This is not a tikkun, this is only a chumrah, they say. So you'll be able to do it on Shabbos if you go by this chumrah, that you remove one piece.
Yeah, if you've got three to remove my piece,
you assume I've removed the one, the correct one. Yeah.
Might be one of the good ones.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rashba. Yeah, he goes into a whole. He goes.
The thought that he has fun with it.
Yeah, he has a lot of fun with it, and he discusses, of course, the same concept that he's discussed in the previous Simanim. That in the same way that there's a din of the Rosh's din, that there's a transformation from Isser to Heter, there's also a possibility of transformation of Heter to Isser. The Heter can become Isser if you have more Isser than Heter. So he has a whole spiel, as we say, a discussion on this concept. So he goes off a little bit into that.
But the mice, you don't.
That's what, as far as what?
That the serve the proportion.
No, not necessarily. No. Yeah. Anyway, there are also as far as the Rashba is concerned, that not to eat them together. The Mechaber says, that was the smag right? The Tosfos read, of course, even one after another. So in other words, so the Ramah is actually going on the last point. Not even, was to be machmir, even bezeh achar that one should not eat. And you have this kind of a situation. He says yesh machmir lahashlich echo, to throw away one or to give it to a goy, but that's only a chumrah. But as far as eating it together, the Ramah says that's the way you should follow, like the last opinion in the Mechaber, that not even to eat them one after another. Odom echo, that is. Okay, as far as Taaruvos of Yovesh b'Yovesh, what would be the din of Kemach b'Kemach? That is also something that is discussed amongst the Poskim. Flour with flour. What is flour? Is flour Yovesh or is flour Lach? Now the reason this comes up is because there are, if you look at the Mechaber, look at the Ramah, you will find in Seif Aleph the words Min b'minoi, Yovesh b'Yovesh, dehainu she'ein nivlal. V'isur oimed be'atzmo. In other words, it's not a complete mixture. What is a complete mixture? Well, Kemach appears to be a complete mixture. As the Shach brings down, he brings down the Bach. The Kemach be'Kemach, even the nivlal mikri lach belach. So that is something that is nivlal, completely mixed. Flour. So some say flour would be called lach belach. Some say Kemach is called Yovesh b'Yovesh. Tosfos brings down both. The opinions that either it's lach or it's yovesh. If it's cooked or if it's hot, some say it's lach. And of course, this could make a big nafkamina. The Mishnah Berurah brings down, I think it's the one in Hilchas Pesach, that since most of the poskim hold, the majority of the poskim hold that kemach, bekemach is considered lach belach, therefore it's not choizer v'nir. What's choizer v'nir? It's a famous concept that you see it in Taaruvos too, but you also see it in Hilchas Pesach. Something that was bottled before Pesach. Let's say you bought orange juice before Pesach, and it has chametz ingredients in it. Can you have it for Pesach? Chametz on Pesach is not bottled afilu b'mashehu. That's how we hold, even a mashehu. But this was before Pesach. You had it before Pesach, so it was bottled. No doubt about it. Just like anything else is bottled. You for sure have the shishim required or more. The question is now that Pesach comes along, do we say choizer v'ni'or? Does it reawaken? Even though it was bottled, but now in Pesach the shir is mashu, do we say that little bit of grain or ingredient that is chametz, not kosher to Pesach, does it reawaken and we can't use it? So it's a machlokes. Mecham brings down both shitas. Some say choizer v'ni'or, some say no choizer v'ni'or. So the Ashkenazim are mechalek between lach belach and yovesh b'yovesh. If it's yovesh b'yovesh, we're more makpid because it's felt, it's there, it's noticeable. And lach belach, it's pretty much diluted. So, if kemach and when kemach is considered lach belach, it would not be choizer v'nir on Pesach, like the Mishnah Berurah says. If you hold it's like a lach belach, then it's not choizer v'nir. So choizer v'nir is a very important concept. The Sephardim are more lenient about it, but we Ashkenazim, there's a chiluk between if it's lach belach and yovesh b'yovesh. So therefore, you may have heard, buy your milk before Pesach. For those who are strict or are concerned about cows that are fed grain on Pesach, for those who have that concern, that if you bought that milk before Pesach, then any grain or any problem that may have been with that milk is bottled before Pesach. You following? Yeah. So buy your milk or buy those items that may have a question or a suffix, buy it before Pesach, especially if it's lach belach. It will be bottled. When it was bottled in the required shir, of course, of shishim. As far as chametz in Pesach, we hold like the majority of the poskim that chametz in Pesach is also b'mashu. There is one shita, and that is the she'iltas. The chametz in Pesach is like any other isurim, shishim, roiv. Yeah, that's the only one. And we don't follow that. We follow the chametz is also b'Pesach b'mashu. But there could be an nafkamina, of course. There could be situations in Hefsed Meruba and so forth that we may consider the she'iltas as well. Because the Rashba, in explaining the issue of chametz and Pesach, says that there's no difference between lach belach and yovesh b'yovesh. Mashu applies even on yovesh. Why? He says because any issue that is also b'mashu has nothing to do with tam.
Right.
When the issue is tam, I can differentiate between lach belach, yovesh b'yovesh. When the issue is not tam, in other words, When the whole Isser is Mashu, then there's no difference. So the Rashba says, therefore, there's no difference on Chometz and Pesach between if something is a liquid or if something is a Yovesh.
So there the question of Taaruvot is a question of does the thing besides itself?
Mashu, yeah. Now the Rosh says no, that the whole Isser of Mashu was only by Lach. Why? Why by Lach? So he says like this, he says people are sometimes not careful. A whole year, the people use a particular product, lo b'dili minei, as he says. In other words, they don't limit themselves from it. And because of that, the Chachamim were choishish that come along Pesach, they may have less than Shishim, and they would feel the time of Chometz on Pesach. So they said, you know what, it's also b'mashu. But that's only by Lach. By Yovesh, you're never going to feel the time anyway. B'min b'minoi. Okay?
So you can't distinguish it.
Yeah, you can't distinguish it, right? Even b'min b'she'eino minoi in this. Even b'min b'she'eino minoi in a sense. I mean, you don't know which one is this. You're not going to feel necessarily the Isser, the Tama Isser, when it's Yovesh b'Yovesh, as you would feel it by Lach. So the Rosh.
You bite into the Isser.
No, you don't know which one is the Isser. You don't see.
But it's going to be the only one that tastes of Chometz.
Well, I don't know if you would tell if there would be a taste of Chometz here. Yeah, it depends on maybe the product. But the Rosh is interesting over here. He says that there would be no Isser Mashu on Yovesh.
So he holds there actually is.
What?
He actually holds there isn't on Yovesh.
Let me see here. Yeah, that's what I recall, that the Rosh says that by Yovesh the Isser, the Tama Isser is not Nikar, it's not identifiable, so it would not be a problem. However, the big surprise comes from the Rambam. In the Ramban, which we've already covered before, we mentioned that, they say, wait a minute, Chometz is a Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin. Their emphasis is that this particular Chometz Isser is unique, but it's a Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin. It's going to be mutter after Pesach. Regardless of its Lach, Yovesh, it's all going to be Asur b'Mash. Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin is Asur.
That's like up the rice.
That's a Drabana. It's all Drabana, right?
No, I mean...
Yeah. Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin, yeah.
How much of Pesach is...
Drabana. Yeah, but Drabana.
So they're talking about the
rice. No, they're talking about that particular shear, or was of not being bottled. It's a Dover Sheyesh Lo Matirin, which in itself is a Drabana.
Become mutter d'oraisa, not the Rabban.
Right.
The fact that they come mutter d'oraisa is sufficient to have that shear.
Exactly. The majority of the poskim hold like the Rashba. In other words, learn like the Rashba. And of course, unless you have other tzdadim that you can rely on the she'ilthas that he holds, that Chometz is just like any other Isser that is bottled with Shishim, then you can mitzvah the she'ilthas if you have other tzdadim need to be matter. Otherwise, we hold like the Rashba. In other words, we hold that it applies to Lach and Yovesh as well in Pesach. So that's the Gaber Chometz. Yeah, maybe we'll learn Seif Beis, and then we'll cover the last couple of points. Seif Beis says, Yovesh b'Yovesh and Isbatel Chad Betrei. If you did have Yovesh that was mixed and was bottled Chad Betrei, in Bishlam, if you went ahead nevertheless and cooked them, Kulon Ke'echad, even if you want to eat each one by itself, Asur, they're bottled. Asur im ein sham shishim. The no 60. Why? Nesharoitev benoisen tam. Roitev, the sauce, the liquid, gives off tam. Venivla bechatichas, it will be absorbed in the chatichas. So once you've cooked them, you have a different
problem.
Different problem here. A different kind of a situation over here. Yes, true that once they're mixed and they're dry, they're bottled chad betrei. But if you went ahead and decided to cook them, now you can't have them unless there was shishim because you have noisin tam. Wow, why should there be a problem here? Wait a minute, didn't they become mutter? Remember the task question, right? At some point they become mutter. So why would this be a problem? This is the mechaber.
Right.
Now, this is, of course, where is this halacha taken from? From the Rashba. Oh, that makes sense. The Rashba is not the Rosh. Now, what's interesting is the next halacha, same sif. But if you want to cook them together, the ein sham shishim, you know ahead of time that there are no 60. Mutar lehar bois aleihim, you're allowed to add. Kedeshir shimi, that you should have shishim ulevashlon, and to cook them. The ein bo mishum mevatel iser. That's not called betel iser. Because there's no iser. Because there is no iser.
Right. The Rashba.
Right. Remember we learned this before. We learned this in Tzadik Tes, right? About the being mevatel isur lechatchila.
Right.
We've covered that. There are situations where we are allowed to add. Maybe let me go back a little bit.
If it already got mixed.
Isur shel divreihem, he says the mechaber, by the rabbanon. Ein me'avim moisu biyadayim kedei levatlo. If you did so b'mezid, it's also aval nofel me'atzmo ve'en beheter kedei levatlo. Mar be'olav mevatlo. There are situations where we can. So the rabbanon. Ramos says no, even if it's an isur the rabbanon. B'chenoyagin. So we did cover this kind of a situation where you may be able to add. Here it's very clear why you can, because there's no isur. You're not allowed to be mevatel isur lechatchila. There's no isur here.
What's already bottle?
It's already bottled. However, the Ramah makes a chiluk. V'yesh oimrin de'im Niddah Taaruvos koidem shenizbashlu. If you know about the Taaruvos before they were cooked, hakol shori. Everything is mutter. Everything is mutter. Why? And it was even in the situation where they were cooked. You knew about it. Why? Because Niddah means the ein choizim v'nesor me'achar shenizbatel b'yovesh. Tur b'shem harosh. Oh, that sounds familiar. Tur b'shem harosh, yeah. Rabbi Yerucham b'shem hatoysu v'kosa sheken ikar. So in other words, here you went ahead and cooked them. But I knew about the mixture before.
So I don't even need.
So there's something called Niddah. Oh, that means they're really, 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 really bottle. Niddah. So he says that this Niddah business, based of course on the rush, it's based on the rush, that it's become heter, and its bottle will not pose or present a problem when in fact you later on you did cook them. If I knew about it now, had I not known about it and I went ahead and cooked them, of course it's a problem. So the chiluk of Niddah is what we want to speak a little bit about now.
But the final conclusion of the Ramah in the case of Hefsed.
Right. Mokum Hefsed, yeah.
So there's no Hefsed, he would still.
Yeah, he's mechalek. Yeah, in other words, he goes along with the mechaber that you can add. That you can add, yes. Remember, the whole thing is in the Rabbanan anyway. With the Raisa, everybody agrees that it's bottle. It is bottle according to everybody, pretty much, almost. Yeah.
But when he's adding them, he got a question.
Right.
Is he adding to
Yes.
some book or by
No, when it comes to cooking, of course it's by volume.
Yeah.
Because there is.
Remember by lach. Remember that point that you mentioned earlier. By lach, whenever there's time involved, you want to cancel out the time.
So this is only an issue of luck.
Cooking is always
Yeah.
in water.
The lach is involved here, so the lach is going to present a problem of time. You want to get rid of this time, so you want to have the shim, of course. Yeah.
Here, this Tom is a Tom because it was already misbottled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you would require 6 to satisfy the rush, not because you're really worried about the Tom.
Yeah.
Since the rush, but rules like that, you don't want to oppose this.
What's the difference between the Rashba and the Rosh? Very simple. And that's where this makes a difference over here. Do we hold the din of choizer v'nir? Because choizer v'nir, is in itself a question. Can something become an isur again? And we discussed this at length. This was a big sugya that we've covered.
And we had it before when you already had 60, something of an additional volume.
Can you use the isur to be metzaref, also the isur to be mevatel, another isur?
A different one.
A different one.
Of the same type of isur was added to where it was misbatel.
Yes.
We said it is exclusive.
Yeah, exactly, because you have something that is misbatel, but here, all of a sudden, you pour some more ketchup, or whatever it is, spice, and you're increasing the time again. You're reviving it, bringing it back to life. Mm-hmm. So what were you saying?
So as far as I recall, that we said that there is.
In that case, yes, if it's the same min.
The same min, of course.
If it's the same min, that means you're bringing it back. You're increasing it, so the bittul is gone. You somehow brought it back to life. When it's not the same min,
so then it will be misbottled.
Right, exactly. So that's the question here. So the Rashba, of course, is going along with this choizer v'nir here too. That even though it's bottle, there's a din of choizer v'nir, right? When you cook it. When you cook it here, because the time is going to come out and present a problem. But the Rosh is going along with the Svara, that once something is mutter, it cannot become asur again. It's mutter. It has transformed itself.
There's no chazim if it was only
is not water.
initial?
Sli, you want the problem of. Unless there's a place where they touch each other.
Unless where they touch each other, yeah, but it's but not the whole thing, yeah.
Question, since we had maybe someone comment.
Sure.
If you recall. We had other similar procedures like salting,
and kavush.
and kavush.
Sure.
With these kinds of considerations.
Which
In other
kind?
words, I have a Biora, and it's Yavish B'Yavish. But now I take the mixture and I soak it for 20. Would I have to respect to requiring 60 like I...
Yeah, because
would this be the same?
yeah,
So this would also-
kavush kemevushal. That's the rule.
would apply here as well.
Yes, sure. Because kavush is considered like mevushal as long as you actually had it for 24 hours or more.
Okay.
Then it has an equivalent.
And salting would be the
thing.
same thing.
Yeah. But by salt, it's meliach keroteach.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's slightly different.
That would Mugabe does here.
Yeah.
By salt.
Anyway, there's a Bach over here that holds that the Rosh is actually saying what he says, even bemin b'she'ino minoi. Whereas the Premier Godem says, in the Chazon Ish too, that it would not apply bemin b'she'ino minoi, because there for sure the time will be detectable, and this din of Niddah, at least, would only apply in min b'minoi.
Are they saying that because even the Yavish you need 60? They're saying it since you might come to, or are they saying it independent?
No, all I saw is that they mentioned is that at some point the tam will be nirgash. So it's like the Tas said before, the Isur is nikah. It's the same kind of an idea. It's as though it is there, it is present, versus the other one where you cannot really discern it. You cannot really see if there's any issue.
That is very...
Yeah.
So because then we're saying,
Yeah.
when is it that the Rosh put in, that it became permitted? So yes, you can identify the taste,
Right.
but you're identifying the taste of something that's permitted. because it's
Exactly.
permitted.
That's what.
So they're not
That's what the
saying-
Bach. That's right. That's what the Bach says. And that's what the other poison explained too elsewhere. That what you really have here is tam of heter.
Yes, but they're saying
Yeah.
no. They're saying you're being nicker. The Isser
Yeah.
becomes nicker because you can recognize the taste.
Yeah.
But they're still considering it an Isser.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they don't consider it has been transformed.
Yeah,
It's a problem of choize veneer.
So, but
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
that the Chaber and also the Ramah here were following Dafka this. It became.
Apparently the Ramah considers this mokum hefsed, that you can rely on them. Interesting. Yeah.
Because that would be both the Ramah and the Chaber would mean b'she'eno. They're not talking about here min b'min.
No, here they're talking about. They started off talking about min b'minoi.
Right. No, but I was saying with respect to our problem here. Once it became a battle.
Actually, he doesn't say it clearly, but even if it was, it's yovesh b'yovesh nizvat el chad b'trei. Even if it was, right, min b'minoi, you cook them.
So you're allowed to add to make it 60.
Right.
So that they would agree as well. They're allowed to 60.
Yeah.
You need 60,
Sure.
and they're allowed to make it 60.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Now, the question here is, if you read this mechaber, is the mechaber being matter lechatchila to cook them or not? It says yovesh b'yovesh nizvat el chad b'trei im bishlon. Are you allowed to mevashel? Lechatchila? No, in the beginning it says, right. It says im bishlon kol rechav afilu lechu kol rechav also im ein sham shishim. So the question is, can you do it if you have shishim? Because the reason the poskim discuss this is because if you look at the Ramah says that Mokum have said yesh lismach adivre makinu lehatir.
But look, according to the Mechaber at least, this
Yeah.
is the Ramah might have
Yeah.
a different opinion. According to the Mechaber, say yavesh veyavesh nitpater chad b'tedei im bishlan kulam keechad afilu lechol kol echad b'fnei atzmo asurim ein sham shishim. If you cook them, if you already cooked them, it's after the
Right,
fact, and you
right.
don't have 60, you're not allowed to eat either.
Exactly,
pieces.
yeah.
בפני שהעלות דמונות של טעם, ונבלע בחתיכות. And because
Yeah.
the lot of it is טעם.
The whole halacha of the Mechaber and the Ramah, especially that says Mokum have said, appears to be the whole thing is a b'diavad.
But look what the
Right.
Mechaber considers. The Mechaber says, ואם לא רוצה לבשלם יחד ואין שם שישים, now he's salting before he's cooked them.
Right, but here he gives you a way out. He gives you a way out. Yeah.
So it's mutar.
But once you see the Ramah that the whole thing is a b'mokum hefsed, you can rely. The question is,
But the Mechaber.
Yeah.
The Mechaber even permits you to increase the
Right.
liquid to make sure that they're 60 so that you will be able to cook it together. Then if the liquid is already 60
Yeah.
anyway, you're allowed to cook them.
right, in that case, yes.
By the Mechaber,
Right.
It's no question. He's even allowing you to increase the liquid, so to ensure that you have 60 when you come to cook it together. So it seems now sounds like it's a halacha.
From the mechaber, yeah. Whereas this question is a little bit more with the Ramah.
But the Ramah was even beyond. The Ramah seems to say
right. According to that shita that holds that Niddah makes a big difference.
Right.
And he wants to rely on the Mokam Hefset.
But he's talking about now. He's talking about that you don't even need.
Yeah.
The Ramah says, when does he say you can only rely on the Mokam Hefset?
Right.
With respect that you don't even need 60.
Of course. In the first
60,
scenario,
so
right?
He doesn't seem to be choilek.
No, he's not choilek. Yeah. But anyway, just wanted to add that from the Rosh, it's mashma that it's mate even lechatchila to cook it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, based on his whole concept of that. It's,
seem to be following.
Right. Once it's bottled, it's bottled. Just another quick 2 points. The Shach brings down here the Rashba that if you were to cook the 3 chatichas in 2 separate kederas, not in one pot, you wouldn't have the same problem. Okay. In this case, that Rashba would not say that it's asur.
Well, you would have a different problem.
Yeah. You have 2 in one pot and you have 1 in a separate pot. So even though they were cooked, now they're not all cooked together. Understand? So in other words, it could be that you have the...
But the one but it's having cooked one separate.
In that case, he says we're not goizer.
If that one that I cooked separately happened to be then I would be eating an outright so it's no longer...
But it's all going to be a safek d'Rabbanan. You understand why, right? In the end, it comes down to being a safek d'Rabbanan.
Because at some point in time it was a misbattle?
Exactly.
So when I took it out, it was from...
Exactly. So on that, the Shach says that the Rashba, in other words, would not asur because on that there was no gzera.
So I wouldn't need 60 in any of the pots?
Yeah, you wouldn't have a problem. Yeah.
Now I have a big problem.
Yeah.
The cooking or staying separate after?
No, they've both been cooked, but they've been cooked separately. So because they've been cooked separately, you don't have the problem of saying, well, now if you don't have shishim, you for sure have a problem with the tam, with the isser affecting it.
I don't understand how that
Not
is
necessarily.
possible.
Yeah.
Based on that premise, why would I require 60? Cook them all together?
When it's all together, you know for sure you have the isser.
No, when I cook them separately, I also not sure whether I have the isser. I just don't know which pot.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's a safek d'Rabbanan. That's why that in itself is not such a big problem. Here you for sure have the problem. So we're goizer. And Rashba says it's asur. In other words, it's a choizer veneer situation coming back. It's resurfacing. But in the other case, not necessarily is it coming back. I mean, I don't know. Yes, maybe not. So it's a safek d'Rabbanan. Anyway, it's an interesting idea. By the way, the Shach on this is machmer. If below Noida Taaruvot, even if it's 2 pots, if it was not known it got cooked in 2 pots, you would need Noida because Noida is the one that really makes seals the beetle. So he's actually machmer on that, unless you have Noida. Without Noida, he says it's a safek d'oraisa because maybe the isser is here, maybe it's here. Without Noida, right?
To make a weekend workshop.
Right. Okay, just. Since this is the end of the Siman, in the next Thursday, Mr. Shem, we're going to be starting a new whole Siman. Perhaps just review one more point here. This whole idea of bitul beroif koidem shenoida iser, which we've discussed in previous Simonim, and here it appears to be making a big nafkamina here. This noida, bitul beroif koidem shenoida versus bitul beroif la'achar shenoida. It's a big machlokes rishonim. Rosh and the Mordechai, in the name of the Rashbam and the Ravan, hold that the bitul beroiv is chal. In other words, it occurs only after there is noida.
And at first I didn't know anything. I mixed them all together.
The actual bitul, if you want bitul to really have a chalois, to take effect, it has to have occurred, and it only occurs from the moment it's noida Taaruvot. So that's a very important. We're going to see what the nafkamina here in a minute. There has to be noida. The Ravad is brought down. I didn't find it by himself. It's brought down in the Ramban, the Ran. Hold that bitul beroiv just occurs even before the yediyah, before noida. It can occur. It has happened. It has taken place. And if you want to read more about it, the Shach discusses it in Siman Tzadik Tes. I mean, we've already learned it before, so I don't want to go back. But in Siman Tzadik Tes, you will see that that makes a difference there too. In other words, what is happening as a result of Niddah? Is that going to make a difference or not? And apparently it does make a difference. But the machlokes is as far as when does bittul occur? Does bittul really occur even without Niddah, or do I need Niddah for it or not? The Ramah, back there in Siman Tzadik Tes, he held like the Rosh. He held like the Rosh that before the Yediyah there's no bittul at all. And because of that, where is there going to be a nafka if you hold like the Rosh? There's no bittul at all. There's going to be a nafkamina if you hold choize veneer or not. That's what we're talking about over here. Because if you hold that there is bittul, right, there was Niddah, so once bittul has occurred, then you can say there's no choize veneer, because bittul has occurred. But if you hold that you need Niddah and there was no Niddah yet, so I mean there was no bittul. Right? In other words, the choize veneer problem that has presented itself over here is definitely going to be an issue if we say that there hasn't been a bittul yet. There are some who say that as long as I know about the Taaruvot, once I know about the Taaruvot, we say kama bottle. Every time a little bit becomes bottle. And even throughout the whole day, you can have an isser being dropped in, and it's becoming little by little bottle. Even though at the end of the day, you're going to have a lot. Remember we discussed that before? Pouring, and every time that little bit of pouring is bottle. But in the end, 4 gallons. But we hold of the concept of kama bottle. The first one, the first amount that has fallen in is already gone. If it's already gone, then whatever is there right now is being mitzvah or being combined to be mevatel the additional drops that are going to fall later on. So if you hold that, obviously, depending on the situation, you don't say choize veneer, because what's choize veneer? The exact opposite of that. I had 1 ounce, yes, but now I have a gallon. That gallon is not bottle anymore. It was in the beginning because it was an ounce. It was 2 ounces. It was 3, but now it's a gallon. So the gallon now combines. Okay, try it out with fuel. You have, or oil. Eventually it's going to build up. You're going to see it. You're going to detect it. It's going to make a big difference. It's just not gone. The molecules, the atoms, they eventually combine. As opposed to emulsion. You know what emulsion is?
Yeah.
What is that?
They get suspended. They get mixed up and suspended.
Yeah, There was some things can dissolve, and some things are not dissolvable, but they stay mixed together, and each one separately. The chemical composition of certain things. Well, it may have various other names. Yeah. No, in medication, this makes a difference. In medication, and actually in various products too, in food items, where they need to sometimes have each one separate from the other and not completely dissolved. It was that each one is, I forget where it makes a big difference. Maybe you can look it up for us. Yeah. So anyway, that's that. Therefore, this chiluk between Niddah and non-Niddah, of course, would make a difference with the nafkamina within the choize veneer. Anyway, another little point that the Shach brings down over here is that the Yediyah is me'akeves Yediyah. When we say Niddah is me'akeves mi'atorah, Minchas Yaakov Chavazdas hold that the Yediyah Sa'iso is not me'akeves only midrabanan. The Rebbe holds like the Shach. So in other words, the Shach seems to be saying it's because it's not only a chiluk, it's a chiluk min Torah. If there was Niddah or there was no Niddah. Whereas others will hold that this whole Niddah thing is only midrabanan. Whether it's me'akev or not, does it make a difference in the end? When you learned Basar b'chalav, you came across it too. The Yediyah. In other words, by kaf, when you stuck a spoon in, did you know in between the 2 times that this has happened or not? It can make a difference. So here, in Hilchos Taaruvos, it makes a little bit of a difference, of course, depending on what you go by, whether you hold choize veneer. Once you say that once you have Niddah for sure, and you hold, especially like the Rosh, that it's bottle. It's gone. But if there was no Niddah, it could present itself as a problem. Maybe bittul never occurred. If bittul never occurred, then we're back to square one. So even if it's yovesh b'yovesh, if they were cooked, as the Mechaber points out in Sif Beis, it could be a problem if there's no shishim. But as the Ramah points out, yesh oimer, the im noida taruvos. If you did know about the taruvos before, everything would be mutar, and therefore they would not be choize v'nir, they would not become asur, since they had been nisbatul b'yovesh. Good? You can be samech on that. I think that pretty much does it for Siman Kuftes. We're headed now for Siman Kuf Yud, which is a tremendous big Siman, and Mitzvah Hashem will spend a little bit of time on that.